Welcome, one and all, to the Hammer Territory Podcast. My name is Shawn Coleman. Hope wherever you are and wherever you are listening, hope that you are having an absolutely awesome week so far. And if you're a Braves fan, it's been a fun week. It's been a stressful week, but at least it has been a fun week. Once again, the Braves within one game of 500 in dramatic fashion, and we're here to break it all down as usual here on the Hammer Territory Podcast. And as always, my podcast partner, one of the best in the game when it comes to covering the Braves, Stephen Tolbert with me. Stephen, good night. Hey, good night. Hello to you, sir. I hope that you're having a good night. Result of the game probably helped.
Yeah, this is another one of those games where the last 10 minutes really could have affected the tone of this podcast. We've had a few of those here recently. And, you know, I was thinking about it sometime around like the 6th or 7th inning. This team reminds me a lot of my golf game. And anybody who plays golf, at least on an amateur level, you go out one day and your driver is fantastic. But you know if your driver's fantastic, your irons suck. And then you go out the next time and your irons are fantastic and your drivers suck. And if by some miracle your irons and your driver are both working, your putter is nowhere to be found. Like, that's just golf. Anybody who plays knows exactly what I'm talking about. And those three things are the Braves offense, the Braves pitching, and the Braves bullpen right now. Where, like, it just seems like every time they get one going, the other just disappears. And, like, the pitching has gotten really hot. Chris Sale, Schwellenbach, the bullpen have all gotten substantially better. We talked about how good the other three guys in the rotation are doing. And as soon as that happens, the offense just goes to hell. And it's like, at any point, can we get all aspects of this team going at once? And it was a good series. The Braves took 3 of 4, but it was a frustrating series because they had to fight like hell, multiple ninth inning comebacks. I'm not sure how sustainable that model is going forward, but a win's a win. So we take them any way we can get them, but still some things with this team that we need to see get better. And it would help a lot if at one point, any point in this season, all aspects of the team could be going at the same time. That would make my life a hell of a lot less stressful.
I have it on good authority that the only thing in this world that's more guaranteed to land in the triple digits than a Mason Miller fastball is Steven Tolbert's golf score through the front nine. But anywho, that's for another day and time. The point that I'm getting at here is this, is that when it comes to the Braves, this Braves team right now, if you go back a year ago, this Braves team reminds me a lot of where we were a year ago and for much of the last 5 months of the 2024 season. Right now, the pitching is doing pretty well, at least the starting pitching. Tonight, we're going to get into how the bullpen, once again, was a bit shaky. This offense is struggling badly when it comes to being able to score runs, especially when it's not hitting the home run. But the one key difference, and I don't know how sustainable it is, but the one key difference is that this offense is getting the job done late. When the game is on the line, the bullpen is doing their job despite Marcell Iglesias, but the offense is eventually getting the job done themselves. And I think that that is something that at least can maintain confidence. I told Stephen before the podcast, I think the concerns of why we're having to win so many games late like we are right now are a bit more significant than this excitement that comes from winning these games. But at the very least, you're winning these games, and it's a lot better to look back and see where you can improve in a win than looking back and seeing what you need to do better to win. And so right now, yes, I think there are some clear concerns with the Braves squad, but at least they're getting the job done and winning. And hey, if the pitching staff can sit here and turn it around like it has over the past few weeks, just wait till this offense gets clicking once again.
Yeah, and listen, the Reds and the Dodgers are two of the best pitching staffs in baseball. Like, I think people learned who probably didn't already know, at least in Braves country, that the Reds have a legitimate rotation, like can carry them to the playoff level rotation. Some of the arms they have, and even their bullpen is very good. You look up and down their bullpen, like everybody's got an ERA in like the 2s. And you know, we talked about it coming into the series. The Reds were above 500. They were a plus 35 differential coming into the series. Like, they weren't a joke. They were a real team, mostly driven by how their run prevention. So, and the Dodgers, of course, are the Dodgers. So I don't want to overreact too much to this one stretch of 7 games against those two teams. But yes, the offense has got to be better. And, it shouldn't take multiple ninth inning comebacks to beat, I don't know if the Reds are going to be in the postseason. Maybe they will. Their pitching is good enough, but still, like, these are the level teams you got to beat. And you got to beat teams even better than this, quite honestly. So yeah, the Braves offense needs to be better. Acuna will help, obviously. Even like Jerkson Profar will help. Alex Verdugo has run into some kind of a cold stretch. I think he's over like his last 17. And we've talked about before, as Verdugo has gone, the Braves have gone. And Verdugo has gotten cold. And so the offense has gotten cold. It's not a coincidence. So, but they need more. They certainly need more on offense. As well as Schwellenbach pitched in this game, and we're going to talk about him in a minute, of course, this should have been an easier win. And it wasn't. But credit to them. They have been 8th and 9th inning monsters, like you just said. They've probably stole some games that they didn't have any right winning. But I'll take it. Until we get Strider and Acuna and Profar back, any win we get, any way we get it, I'm not apologizing for. I'll take it. And on to Pittsburgh.
On to Pittsburgh. And it's nice to say on to Pittsburgh after you win 3 out of the previous 4 games. And that's the thing again. This Braves team is winning, and the pitching is getting in a better spot. We talked about how much success they've had with A.J. Smith, Java Grant Holmes, or Bryce Elder on the mound. The bullpen, despite another bit of implosion from Marcell Ozuna, it's been pretty nails overall over the past few weeks. But no doubt about it, the Braves are going to be at their best again when their best are performing like their best. And that is Chris Sale as well as Spencer Schwellenbach. And Spencer Schwellenbach, it feels like for the first time in maybe 2 or 3 weeks, had his best start that we've seen in a while. Now, let's go ahead and get into the details here a bit. 6 innings pitched, 5 hits allowed, 6 strikeouts, 2 walks. Still was giving up some pretty hard hit balls. But the big key for tonight, Stephen, is that those balls weren't elevated. They were on the ground where he allowed for his defense to be able to get the job done. And we talked about that the Braves defense has been pretty good as well. But he was resting in that 97, 99 area. He did seem to have a bit better control, a bit better, his pitches seemed to be more in line with what he was needing for them to do. So yes, again, not the best that we've seen from Spencer Schwellenbach, but getting closer to what we expect each night that he's on the mound. A pretty good outing. I know the Reds' offense is not murderer's row, but this is one of those starts you can build on, especially once the Braves got the win.
Yeah. Much better start, of course. I mean, obviously, you give up 1 run in 6 innings. You did your job. By process, there's still things that he needs to clean up. Still leaving too many pitches in the middle of the plate. The velocity is fantastic. I mean, he's throwing 97, 98, 99, the entire game. But it's, too often it's in the middle of the plate, and especially on the first pitch. And I thought the broadcast did a good job tonight kind of outlining this. He's given up most of his hard contact on the first pitch of the at-bat because he's basically always starting the at-bat with a fastball. And that fastball is always somewhere belt-tied down the middle. And I don't know if he's doing that on purpose. I don't know if he's just trying to get ahead. Glavin was talking about this on the broadcast about maybe going to a breaking ball on the first pitch. I'm sure his thinking is I'm throwing this hard. Even down the middle, it's hard to hit. And he's right. That is true. The Tampa Bay Rays have built an entire organization around that philosophy that on the first pitch of the bat, you just throw it right down the middle. Because even, they get a bunch of guys who throw 99, and even right down the middle, it's hard to hit. So that is true. But even when he's throwing the slider, the curveball, there's still pitches he's just hanging in the middle. And the 1 run he gave up tonight was on an 0-2 or a 1-2 hanging slider right down the middle of the plate. And that burned the Braves a couple of times tonight, as we'll get to in a minute with Iglesias. But I don't want to nitpick too much. So 6 innings, 1 run. It's something to build on, right? It's something to kind of launch you into your next start, which hopefully is even better. And then you're on a roll, and kind of like we've seen with Chris Sale, then you're back to normal. So, the schedule is going to lighten up. He's going to get some offenses that aren't the greatest in the world coming up. And man, it'd be huge if him and Sale really did start turning this thing around, and that just makes everything so much easier.
Absolutely, it does. And we'll continue to talk about some things. It's great to celebrate the win. But again, these late inning comebacks, as fun as they are to see, how sustainable is it? Again, some concerns certainly worth talking about that are leading to so many, that are the reasons why we're seeing so many of these late inning victories. We'll get more into that in just a moment after a word from our partners.
It is complicated enough to figure out what type of car you want, but when it comes to pricing and best time to buy and all of that information that you're looking for, Car Gurus is the only destination that you should be thinking about, Kratz. Why?
Because I don't have to question what the price is. It's going to be there. If the price changes and comes down to where I want it to be, bang, I get a notification. Car Gurus is giving it to me straight, and this is how I want to purchase a car. Not fast. I just want to know what's going on.
With over 4 million listings, Car Gurus has more car listings than any other major online automotive marketplace in the U.S. So you can find the best deal, and it's no wonder SimilarWeb estimated traffic data shows Car Gurus is the #1 most visited car shopping site. So you can buy or sell your next car today with Car Gurus at cargurus.com. Go to cargurus.com to make sure your big deal is the best deal. That's cargurus.com, cargurus.com.
All right, Stephen, let's kind of go through this game because I think that this game definitely was. I like to use the word microcosm because it's just a fun word to say. But let's talk about some of the things that I think from this game you can take, and if you expand them, the things you could spotlight in this game as being a bit concerning. I think in general you also could look at this, kind of the same themes for the season. And I want to start with the fact that you and I, before the season, one thing that I had really focused on was that from last year, we talked about so many things going wrong, but 3 things that went right were the guys, our veterans in the middle 30s who just had outstanding years. Chris Sale, Marcell Ozuna, as well as Marcell Iglesias. But I had a bit of concern on my end. Would they potentially fall off? Would we see a bit of regression? We've seen a little bit from Chris Sale. We'll get into Marcell Iglesias in a minute, but I want to talk about Marcell Ozuna first off. And the main thing I want to talk about with him is that I don't necessarily think that he has regressed, but I also think that you brought up a really good point during the game, and that when it comes to Marcell Ozuna, he's not impacting the game as much as we would like for him to, or as much as the numbers suggest that he has, or that you're so used to seeing him do over the past couple of years. The big reason why I feel he's just not getting as many opportunities because he's getting on base so much. But in general, when we talk about this offense getting going, you want your best hitters to have as much opportunities as possible. Even when he's getting those opportunities, it doesn't feel like Ozuna is impacting the game as much. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so it started with just a feeling like I was watching the game and I was just thinking to myself, I know objectively Marcell Ozuna has great numbers. He's got a 150 WRC plus this season, which is elite. That's elite offensive production. But I watch every game and it just doesn't feel like I was just having this feeling like it doesn't feel like Marcell has impacted as many games or to the level that you would think a guy with a 150 WRC plus sitting in the middle of the order would. Now, I know he had the walk-off hit in extra innings a couple of days ago, but I went and looked. I was curious. So there are all these stats about how guys impact the actual winning of game, win probability added. There's a bunch of them. And I just went and looked, and they kind of confirmed what I was thinking, that like he has been kind of in the background of these games. He hasn't been at the forefront of impacting, winning or losing. He's just kind of been there. And I know, listen, everybody on Twitter sent me the same reply. It's because most of his production has come via walk, and you're not going to break a game open with a walk. I get that. And, there are people, he's being too patient. It's kind of moving past patient and into kind of passive. And I don't know if I agree with that yet. He's running like a 450 on base percentage. And I'm not going to disparage that. Like that is valuable. Some of the guys around him need to do more when he's on base. Now, listen, I've said this before. When Marcell Ozuna gets on base, he's not exactly a weapon on the base pass. So, this is not exactly like Acuna running a 450 on base percentage. When we saw tonight, we're going to get to in a minute where he got pitch run for in a controversial situation. But yeah, it has been a weird season for him where his numbers are unquestionably awesome numbers. But the actual impact of winning the games, even statistically, if you look at the numbers, like win probability added, is not there. Like he hasn't had that kind of impact that you maybe would expect for somebody who's having that good of a season offensively. And I really didn't mean it. Some people took it as me disparaging Ozuna. I really didn't mean it like that. It was just more of an oddity. I watch a lot of baseball, and you don't typically see somebody sit in the middle of the order, have really good numbers, and yet not really feel their presence in an overall season. Like I think Marcell's driven in like 13 runs this year, which he's on pace to drive in like 60 runs, which is so odd for somebody with that good a number sitting in the middle of a lineup. And so it's just been weird. It wasn't meant to be disparaging towards Ozuna, who's been one of the Braves' more consistent players. More just trying to kind of talk my way through the understanding of it. Like it's just kind of an oddity to me.
Yeah, and I agree. I definitely think that it's worth discussing because of the fact that, again, if he's not impacting the game as much as we would like for him to see or that he has in the past, that right now arguably is your best hitter not getting as many chances or not being as consistent as you might hope with impacting the game. So that means that you need to have other ways to impact the game, or at the very least not take away from your ability to win the game. And I love Brian Snitker. I think that, the majority of Braves country does. He's been a great manager overall. I think that he's perfectly fine as the manager right now. But we are seeing, again, these moments where I don't know if the better label for them is snitting the bed or perhaps, snit for brains. I go with whatever you want to call it. The point that I'm getting at is that when we talk about the potential of this team right now, it's not high enough to where when Snitker has these decisions that he's making, like, for instance, pitch hitting Eddie Rosario for Eli White when you had, Sean Murphy as an option instead of Eddie Rosario. We saw other moments like this tonight. It just feels like that we're seeing, I know that it's been in the past, but it just, right now we can't see them at the level that we're seeing them, where Snitker is making these decisions. He's choosing to go with a person in a big moment that clearly is not the best option. There were a couple of times where that happened again tonight, and it just feels like that he's lowering the overall opportunity for the Braves to win games by not going with the best option. He's got to start doing that more consistently.
Yeah, so let's go through these chronologically. So obviously the game was 2-1. Michael Harris had hit the triple that scored the second run of the game. The Braves took a 2-1 lead. Schwellenbach pitches 6 innings. So we're into the 7th inning. The Braves are up 2-1. And the Braves have been using their bullpen a decent amount. They haven't had an off day in about a week. So I was curious to see who was down, who was up tonight for the game in terms of the bullpen. So the first guy that comes out of the bullpen is Montero, Rafael Montero. It's a 2-1 game in the 7th inning. The Braves are winning. And I'm thinking, all right, well, that probably means like Dylan Lee, Pierce Johnson, these guys are down, and the Braves are just going to have to piece this thing together tonight. And we've seen that in the past with Snit. He just goes into games where some guys aren't available, and and you can agree with that, disagree with that. I understand his logic with that. It's a long season. So Montero pitches. Montero instantly gets into trouble. I think the bases are loaded, 1 out. Out goes Montero. In comes Dylan Lee. And I'm thinking, okay, well, if Dylan Lee's available, why wasn't he pitching just to start the inning? But then I think, well, maybe, Dylan Lee was going to pitch the 8th. And so Dylan Lee gets out of it. He does give up 1 run. And so it's a tie game. And so now we go to the 8th inning, and Pierce Johnson's pitching in the 8th inning. And I'm like, all right, well, Dylan Lee was available. Pierce Johnson was available. And then we get to the 9th inning, and Marcell Ozuna is pitching. I'm like, okay, so you had 3 of your high leverage relievers all available. You had a 1-run lead going into the 7th inning. Why is Rafael Montero pitching? Montero is probably like your 7th best pitcher. I don't know. I haven't done a hierarchy of the bullpen in a while, but like, he's not great. He's given up 13 walks in 12 innings this year. That's That's awful. Of course, that's, you can't really sustain that way, but he's a low leverage pitcher, so it hasn't mattered that much. So I just found that weird. The bullpen did well overall. I mean, I thought Dylan Lee did a good job when he came in. Raisel Iglesias, of course, hung that slider on an 0-2 pitch, was just one of the worst pitches I've ever seen, quite honestly. And we can talk about him more in depth if you want to, but yeah, we'll get into some of the other decisions in a minute, but that specifically, pitching Montero with a 2-1 lead in the 7th inning, when you had your three of your high leverage relievers clearly available for this game. Sometimes we don't know who's available, but when they literally pitch later in the game, they were obviously available. Yeah, maybe you have an opinion. I couldn't quite figure that one out.
I don't really have an opinion because I don't get it. With where the Braves are right now, again, we talk about for the Braves to get out of this, for them to win at the frequency that they're going to need to win, to really have not only a shot to get into the playoffs, but also make noise, be that World Series contender we still feel that they have the potential to be. They've not only got to see their best perform at their best, they've got to go with their best in the right situations. And the other thing that they've got to do, Stephen, because this is really getting into my crawl, stop flipping bunting. Please stop bunting. I get the concept. I understand the reason why you're looking to bunt. It gives you a higher floor of an outcome when you're in a need for a productive out. But with how inconsistent this offense is, and when they're down late in games or when they're tied late in games, they need for each at bat to have as much potential as possible. That is allowing for your hitters to be able to actually have an at bat, especially someone like an Eli White, who right now is one of your best hitters. Just stop bunting. It's not really working out that consistently enough for you to do it as frequently as you are. Soapbox removed. Let's get back to the game itself. The thing that I'll say is that, again, getting back to these decisions that aren't really making a lot of sense. He put Stuart Fairchild in for Marcell Ozuna in the 8th run, but then Fairchild didn't really do anything on the bases, and so you didn't take full advantage of the reason why you put Fairchild in the game. And it wound up, now nothing against Stuart Fairchild, I think he did fine in terms of what he had, but you did take away the opportunity for Marcell Ozuna to be up in a big spot in the 10th. Again, it just seems like it's not necessarily all the decisions that Brian Snitker is making is wrong necessarily. It's just that he's making a lot of decisions that seem to lower the overall potential that this offense has when it needs to have as much potential as possible when it comes to outcomes that will lead to runs.
Yeah, it was a weird night for Snit. It's kind of felt like he kind of overmanaged a little bit. It just kind of felt like he was pulling levers just to pull them, starting with Ozuna. Ozuna gets a 2-out single. It was in the bottom of the 7th or bottom of the 8th. I can't remember. He gets a 2-out single. 2 outs, nobody on. He gets a single. And Snit immediately pulls him for Fairchild to pinch run. And obviously what he's thinking is if Matt Olson hits a double, I want the run to score because it's the go-ahead run. But when there are 2 outs in the inning, the run expectancy in that situation is very low. And it's even lower if Fairchild is just going to stand at first base. Now, if Fairchild immediately took off and went to second base and tried to steal, okay, I can at least justify it a little bit. But Fairchild just stood there waiting for Olson to either hit one in the gap or hit one over the wall. It just that's not a high enough run expectancy to take Ozuna out of the game when there's a very good chance you're going to need his bat at some point later in the game. So yeah, I did not like that. There was the bunting. Eli White bunted twice in this game. There was a time where Eddie Rosario pinch ran. Eddie Rosario was the pinch runner for Sean Murphy. I honestly don't know that Eddie Rosario is faster than Sean Murphy. Now, Rosario did score the tying run in the 9th inning, but he was struggling around the bases. And then obviously Orlando came up in the extra innings and he bunted and he popped out and everybody freaked out on Orlando because that's the first time he's had a plate appearance in 6 weeks. And that's what he does with it. It was a weird game by Snit. And then you add in the bullpen decisions. I think he was desperate for this win. I think he was trying to be aggressive as possible. I just don't think I don't think a lot of them made sense, quite honestly. I don't love Eddie Rosario on this team. I don't actually love Orlando Arcia on this team because you get into situations where neither one of them are good enough to pinch hit and neither one of them are fast enough to pinch run. And you're like, what the hell are these guys doing on a major league bench? Like, those are the two big roles that you have on as a bench player is you're going to pitch hit or you're going to pinch run. And neither one of those guys can do either one of them.
Can't play defense either. Neither can play defense either.
Yeah, and obviously Arcia is a big drop off from Allen defensively, which is why he's lost his job. And Rosario is terrible defensively. So I don't understand some of that's not Snit's fault. I don't quite understand some of the pieces on the bench as currently constructed, but we're not going to let this train get too far down the track. They made enough plays to win the game. And I want to say the name of somebody before we forget, because I will forget. The hero of this game, besides Drake Baldwin, obviously the game-winning hit, was Scott Blewett. That was the hero of this game. 2 innings pitched in extras with a ghost runner on second. And he doesn't give – I don't even know if the Reds got a runner to third in either one of those innings. Now, there was a couple of really good defensive plays. Matt Olson made an incredible defensive play. Drake Baldwin made a great throw on a guy trying to steal. But Scott Blewett was amazing. And Scott Blewett's been amazing since he's come over. And, that dude's got some real peripherals, like some real stuff behind his numbers that make me think like this guy might actually be something more than just a low leverage reliever. Those were not low leverage innings he was pitching tonight, and he was unreal. He was sitting 95, 96, 97, the slider, the splitter. Like that dude's got something in it. That dude's got some real juice. And I was blown away with how well he did tonight. I think he won the Braves the game, quite honestly.
Let's also discuss, as good as Scott Blewett was, I think it also is getting back to a name that we had mentioned a bit earlier in the show. The reason why the Braves were in this position to begin with, and what has been an unfortunate thing so far this year, is Marcell Ozuna. I know I talked about him earlier, but there's some real concerns here. He's given up 6 home runs so far this year, and he gave up 4 all of last year in 70 innings, 6 so far this year, I believe, in 15 innings now, however as much he's thrown. There's some concern. I'm not saying that we're to the point to where, he shouldn't be considered the main guy for the 9th, but if you are lacking confidence in him getting the job done when he goes out there, I don't blame you a bit. Stephen, you talked all winter about the fact that there were clear signs that the regression monster could eventually show up at some point this year. It has showed up, and it showed its head early on this season, unfortunately. I think that Marcell Ozuna will obviously be better as the season goes along. I don't think he's going to come close to what he was last year, but the Braves need for him to be some sort of consistent. They need for him to at least be trustworthy. And right now, with the way that he's going, it's hard to say with confidence that you can find his overall performance trustworthy at the moment.
Yeah, it's just inconsistent. Like, he goes through these stretches where he looks awesome. A couple of games before this one, he had some really strong outings. Some like 7-8 pitch saves. It's mostly command. And listen, there was no chance he was repeating last year. Last year was a one-off. There was not a single number in his profile that had any indication that last year was in any way sustainable or repeatable. It just wasn't going to happen. And that's why we spent all offseason trying to kind of warn people that this was probably going to happen. I'm not going to pretend like I expected it to this level. I did not. And nor did I expect it this fast. It's kind of come all at once here at the beginning of the year. But he is not as good a pitcher as he was last year, as he showed last year. And this is some regression to the mean. Now, I think it's probably gone a little too far. I think it'll go back. I think he's better than this. I think he's left some pitches over the middle of the plate. And it seems like every time he leaves one over the middle of the plate, the guy doesn't miss it. And tonight, the guy hit a rocket double to right center field. And then the next guy, he got ahead 0-2 on 2 really good sliders. And then he threw one of the worst pitches I've ever seen. Just a hanging middle, just like high school level slider. And the dude hit it, 3 miles for a 2-run homer. So I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. Snit is incredibly loyal to his closers. We've seen this before. Will Smith, Kenley Jansen. We've seen the Braves kind of struggle with closers' inconsistencies in the past. And Snit usually has to have his arm twisted for months before he makes any sort of move. I do wonder at some point if Daysbell maybe gets a look. Daysbell's looks so good. That's a fascinating, that's going to be a fascinating thing to watch, quite honestly, is how prevalent are these inconsistencies from Marcell. Now, tonight wasn't a save opportunity, which is always tough, tougher for a closer, but still, he didn't pitch well. So yeah, that's going to be a storyline looking forward, is how long is his leash? How many of these can he have before the Braves decide we might have to try somebody else there?
The one thing that I think needs to be said, though, is that, yes, while Marcell Iglesias has struggled, for much of this season so far, I think that it's fair to say, but also besides that, the hierarchy of this bullpen has kind of fell into place quite well. Overall, this Braves bullpen, I think, especially over the past few weeks, has done very well. They're still going to have some, shaky outings and things like that. But you just mentioned Daysbell, who's been a great revelation so far this season. He's taken over the 8th inning. Scott Blewett's been a great addition. Pierce Johnson, Dylan Lee, I feel those guys are doing just fine. I know Aaron Bummer can kind of be up and down, but still think he is a pretty good reliever, when you need for it to happen. So the rest of this bullpen has kind of fallen into place in the way that you had hoped it would. I think that it's getting to the point of being reliable, and I think the Marcell Iglesias will be just fine getting there as well.
I do want to add this because I got, no joke, 17 replies on Twitter tonight as soon as it happened. Craig Kimbrell is not going to close for this team.
Yeah,
people think Craig Kimbrell is making his way through the minors to come up and be the Braves closer. Guys, that's not going to happen. That's not the Craig Kimbrell that's coming. And I really hope people don't expect that. Maybe they put Kimbrell in high leverage at some point because Snit will put anybody in high leverage, as we've learned. But if you think Craig Kimbrell is coming up to be the guy, this is not 2014. Kimbrell, I really want to help people set expectations about what Kimbrell is, what he isn't, and what to expect when he gets here, if he gets here. Because it's not to be like a 50 save closer like he was the first time he was a Brave. That's a decade ago, and people need to kind of let that go.
Yeah, I would rather see Scott Blewett in a high leverage situation right now than Craig Kimbrell.
I would 100% rather see Daysbell. I mean, if we're picking new closers, Kimbrell's not anywhere near the top.
Yeah. Iglesias, Daysbell, Dylan Lee, Pierce Johnson, Scott Blewett, Aaron Bummer. I would take all those guys over Kimbrell in high leverage. I don't mean anything negative towards Craig Kimbrell in that aspect. I just don't think his fastball is there anymore to where you can consistently trust him in that situation. But speaking of potential moves that could come, we did receive word today that we may be a bit closer than some may have anticipated to a significant roster move occurring when it comes to the Braves pitching staff. And that is the fact that Spencer Strider, he got a positive, review today. He got some positive news after his bullpen yesterday. I know it kind of threw some by surprise that there wasn't any update after his bullpen, but I believe the word is he's going to throw another bullpen in Pittsburgh. And then after that, it may even be to the point to where if that goes well, he could come back without even doing a rehab start. That's the first bit of interesting news. But the second bit of interesting news, Stephen, is that the discussion now is about maybe seeing a 6-man rotation. Now, I get the idea of the Braves having a 6-man rotation. It limits innings. It allows for people to kind of work back into getting into their normal workload, all those different things. I personally am not the biggest fan of a 6-man rotation because I think that what it does is that it does not allow for you to throw your best arms as often. And right now, that's what the Braves need to do. But that's going to be an interesting development. I think we see it at first. I think we see a 6-man rotation at first, but eventually you see the bullpen needing to have moves made to, again, make it reliable. Stephen, what say you? It's good to hear the idea that, possibly we could see Strider back maybe within the next week to 10 days, possibly. But that 6-man rotation idea is pretty interesting. I think they at least look into it, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's short-lived, and I kind of want it to be to make sure we're pitching our best arms as often as possible.
Yeah. I mean, listen, we know they did it last year, and they were obviously very concerned about the number of innings their top guys were throwing last year. Chris Sale trying to keep him healthy. Ronaldo being a starter for the first time in a few years. So it would not surprise me at all. Some of it's going to depend on how well Elder, Smith-Shawver, and Grant Holmes continue to pitch. the first time one of those guys has 2 bad starts in a row, you're probably going to start hearing, well, let's just go back to a 5-man rotation and either option one of them or stick them in the bullpen. And by the way, sticking them in the bullpen should not be ignored because that's a very real possibility at this point. But I tell you what, I would just love to get to the point where that's the problem we're discussing, where they have too many starters. I would love to get to that point because we've spent this entire season desperate for starters, needing guys like Bryce Elder and AJ Smith-Shawver to cover. I think Elder's made 4 or 5 starts already this year. That was not plan A by any means. So I would just love to get to the point where that's the conversation is what do we do with these 6 starters? It was really good to hear. I was really surprised to hear that Spencer Strider might not need a rehab appearance. That's how good his bullpen looked, and that's how good he felt. I'm always nervous. Listen, I worry about everything, especially the pitching. I'm always nervous about Spencer until we see him start for like a month and really feel good. The elbow feels good. The hamstring feels good. I'm going to be on pins and needles the whole time. But from everything they're saying publicly, he looks great. He feels great. I'm going to lean on that. I'm going to, Jesus take the wheel. I'm going to lean on that. And hopefully this guy can get healthy because good Lord, did the Braves need another starter. They need someone else because as good as Grant Holmes, AJ Smith-Shawver, and Bryce Elder have been, I feel like that's a bit on borrowed time. I don't feel like that's entirely sustainable for the next 6 months. I would love to just be able to enjoy that and then move Spencer Strider into one of those spots and say, thank you, Bryce Elder, for everything you did. We'll call you back up if we need you, something like that. Or if they go to a 6-man or if they put one of them in the bullpen. I hope that's where we are in a couple of weeks or maybe even sooner than that, because that's how good the news was on Strider today. So yeah, that was a wonderful bit of news that we unexpectedly got today.
From the unexpected shout out to Carrie Underwood with Jesus Take the Wheel to another great development when it comes to this series is the fact that one player that we have talked about, we mentioned it on the last podcast. We really didn't want to get too much into how much he struggled so far this year, but it should not in any way, shape, or form be ignored that Michael Harris II had a really good series against the Reds. Yes, he still struggled at the plate, that last at bat, where he kind of, seemed kind of off balance, as a bad at bat in a big moment against the Reds reliever, one of the Twins, to Taylor Rogers. There you go.
I get him confused too. Taylor, I can never remember.
He did struggle with that at bat, but so many big hits in this series. Again, if he could ever get going, and I know that a big key to that is the ability to be able to take pitches. It's so frustrating when he does not do that. But he had a big series. This is a moment for him to build off of. It would be great to see that because as we get into a tougher part of the schedule, if we could get Michael Harris and Ronald Acuna Jr. both going at the same time, you want to talk about this offense going to the next level, that would be a pretty clear way to get it done.
Yeah, he needs credit. That's a huge series. I mean, he had a triple. He had an RBI triple that gave the Braves the lead in the 6th inning or 5th inning. And then he had that big at bat in the 9th inning, right? And came through with a single, scored Eddie Rosario. Listen, it wasn't hard hit, but it was well placed, and that's all that matters. There's been a lot of talk about Michael. Unequivocally, he's having a down year. Anybody can look at his numbers. I think he's at like a 65 WRC plus for the year. He's not having the year he wants. He still needs to walk more. I mean, you got to walk more. You have to. You can't run a 2% walk rate. I don't know if you can go through Major League history and look at like successful offensive players and how many of them ran a sub 3% walk rate. It's basically impossible to find. It just doesn't happen. So he has to walk more. Everybody knows that. He's got to, and not only just walk more, he's got to take more bad pitches, even if they don't necessarily end in walks. He's just got to have better process where he's swinging at good pitches. Listen, when this dude swings at strikes and he makes contact, the ball can go forever. The dude's got light tower power. The dude, he's got ability to hit all over the field. He can run like the wind. He's a great defender. He's literally this one thing away from being a great player, but it's such a big thing that if he doesn't do it, it could wreck his career. I've talked about this a lot with Javi Baez, but this thing literally wrecked Javi Baez's career. Despite all the talent in the world, all the defensive potential, all the power in the world, if you don't fix this one thing, it can wreck you. And so, great series from Mike. Huge hits. I mean, other than Scott Blewett, the next hero in this team in this game was Michael Harris for sure. Multiple at-bats where he drove in runs, critical runs that the Braves would not have won without. So, yeah, he needs his flowers for this series. Great series. Let's start to see better process. Let's start to see some more walks, some more takes on bad pitches, get into good hitters counts, and let your natural talent take over, because he's still got a ton of natural talent. He really does. And if he can do it a little better, would see more series like this. If he could take some more pitches, we would see more series like this. And that's what we all want. We want this Michael Harris.
There was one more hero in this game, and I think that it's an interesting player to discuss, because you actually wrote about this over at Battery Power. You wrote about this over at Battery Power. You talked about what the utilization of Drake Baldwin. You wrote about this about 7 to 10 days ago. And it's hard to sit Sean Murphy right now. We talk about the need for this offense to have as many good hitters as possible. Sean Murphy has clearly been one of our best so far this year. But Drake Baldwin coming through again in a big situation, I think shows why, even though he may not be getting consistent playing time in terms of everyday at bats, he still has a pretty frequent calling in big moments that I think allow for him to still get value out of his role for this team. And that is 4+ times a week. He is an advantage to use off this bench. If Snicker makes the right call, he can be an advantage at the plate. And that's such a nice luxury for the Braves to have, is that whether Baldwin or Murphy are starting, the other could be a nice late inning option to go to as a replacement or in a pitch hitting situation. And that's what Baldwin did. He hit a home run, I believe, last night. He got the game-winning hit tonight. He is showing that even if he's not getting frequent playing time, he can still be ready in the right situation. And that is such a good measure of a player who's going to be able to contribute to the major leagues when his number is called. It was great to see him come through once again. And as a rookie, he's shown that he's made for the big moments. He's delivered time and time again.
Yeah, well, that's the question I posed in that article was, is this the best use of him, right? Like, is it, he's basically starting 2 games a week. At this rate, he's going to get probably less than 300 plate appearances on the year. Is that the good use of your top prospect? Are you sacrificing too much developmental time with him by him sitting on the bench so much? And one of the points I made in that article was the reason I think he keeps doing it and the Braves are keep being okay with it is because of the quality of at-bats he's putting up, despite the fact that he does not have consistent playing time or consistent plate appearances. It is not normal for a player this young to be able to do what he's doing. I've talked about this a lot before, but bench players are almost always veteran players because they are familiar and they are used to staying ready without consistent playing time. Young players are not. Young players need consistent playing time to maintain their level. And that's one of the things that makes what Drake Baldwin's doing so incredible, because this dude is putting up 10-year veteran at bats as a 24-year-old, despite getting like 5-6 at bats a week. I really can't explain it. I mean, this dude's just an advanced hitter. And listen, Sean Murphy had a big hit tonight. He had that ball that went over the right fielder's head in the 9th inning that helped spark that rally. And then, of course, Drake Baldwin came in and had the big hit in the 11th inning to win the game. As much as I think there is a legitimate argument that the Braves are hurting his development by sitting him so much, I don't think you can take him out of the role. He's just too good at it. I mean, the fact that his at-bats are this good is insane. And if the quality of his at-bats had dropped at all after Sean Murphy came back, I would have said send him back to AAA. But they haven't. If anything, they've gone up. I mean, he hit a home run in his one start of this series yesterday, and then he comes off the bench and hits the game-winning hit today. This kid's 24 years old. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense how good he is. And all the credit in the world to him, man. I mean, just an incredible, incredible player. Way better than I thought he was. And that kid looks like he's a legitimate piece for the future.
And it's a rare situation where, well, I think it's fair to discuss, is it best for his development? It's clearly best for the Braves to have him in the majors rather than
Exactly.
That's absolutely what it comes down to.
Yep.
For this offense that struggles with so much inconsistency, at least consistently having an option that you can feel confident in Murphy or Baldwin late in games to be able to utilize. And I'll give Stick credit. He has utilized those two. Despite last night, he has mostly utilized those two in good ways when it comes to using them late in games. I think that that's best for the Braves right now. You continue to go with it. Stephen, as we wrap up this edition of the Hammer Territory podcast, one other thing to discuss, and of course, that's the weekend series headed to Pittsburgh, one of the most beautiful ballparks in the majors. There is one simple task that I ask for the Braves to get done, and it's a fancy way of saying that they need to win the series. This Braves team must be at 500 or better by Sunday. No other way to say it. They're going into an opportunity where they clearly are the better team. I believe that they're going to be able to miss Paul Skeens in this series as well. I know that the Pirates can still have some pretty good pitching to throw at you, but just in general, this Braves team needs to win this series and be at 500 or better by Sunday. That's just absolutely what needs to occur.
Yeah, the Pirates are having a rough year. They just fired their manager today. And I was reading some of the stuff that came out, and pretty much everybody was stunned that the GM wasn't fired along with the manager. Everybody kind of expected both guys to be fired. One of them got fired, the other one stayed. So that kind of tells you how their season's going. They're 12-26. Paul Skeens pitched on Tuesday, so technically he could pitch on Sunday if they wanted to skip a starter, but the Pirates didn't play today. So for him to pitch on Sunday, they would have to skip one of their starters to get him in. They don't typically do that with young pitchers. So Sean's point is correct. Most likely the Pirates have not announced any pitching for the series, probably because they fired their manager today and they have other things to do. But they haven't announced any of the three pitchers for the series yet. For the Braves, I think it's Elder, Smith Shawver, Chris Sale are the three this weekend for the Braves. Listen, normally I would come on here and tell you I don't feel great about Bryce Elder starting another major league game, but the kid he's pitched so well. It's not fair to me to say that. And the Pirates are not good. They're a terrible offensive team. They're a terrible team in general. The Braves should win 2 out of 3. And, I don't care how bad the team is. It's hard to expect more than that. But the Braves should win 2 out of 3. Like Sean said, you win 2 out of 3. You're back to 500 by Sunday. That should be the expectation. Losing this series to the Pirates would be awful. The Braves are substantially better than the Pirates. Go win 2 out of 3. Get back to 500. The schedule still remains pretty easy. I think it's Washington after Pittsburgh. So this is this part of the schedule where the Braves can make some hay and maybe even get, I know this is crazy talk, maybe even get above 500. I mean, could you imagine? I can't, but could you imagine? Oh, above 500 after starting 0-7. That is technically possible if they take care of business against a couple of bad teams they're about to play. So that's the goal. Win 2 out of 3 in Pittsburgh. Get back to 500. You got Washington next. Get above 500 and then take it from there. And hopefully Strider's back. Acuna's almost back. You can really start to rewrite the narrative of this season.
And it's not like you've seen any scenarios here recently where the Braves were about to be 500 with Chris Sale on the mound and he pitched very well, and then the offense just went into the can.
No,
you haven't seen that here.
No, we can't do that.
You can't.
We can't end this show on a negative. The Braves are going to get back to 500 this weekend.
The Braves will be above 500 when Monday rolls around. That's what
I didn't say that. I said they'd get back to 500. 2 or 3.
The Braves are.
Oh, that's what you're saying. You're saying sweep
the Pirates. That's where we're at. The Braves are sweeping the Pirates
okay.
as long as no one snits to bed. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Hammer Territory podcast. Always a pleasure to be with you. Make sure you check out all the great content at StatsSAC when it comes to Twitter at @B_Outliers. Brad and Scott will be back with you Sunday, recapping the series sweep, hopefully, of the Braves over the Pirates. And of course, we are part of the Foul Territory family of podcasts. Make sure you check out all the great content, YouTube, Spotify, Apple, wherever you choose to listen. That's where we'll be for free. Just hit that subscribe button and we'll be with you. For Stephen Tolbert, my name's Shawn Coleman. Until next time, go Braves. We'll talk to you again soon here on the Hammer Territory podcast.